Going live. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go through what this is and kind of give you a breakdown of what the day looks like. And I'll go over that in a minute with you. Going live. So, all right. We are in. Excellent. Okay. Hello. Eve, thank you so much for joining me today for training. I'm so excited to have you. We have guests in the background doing what they do. First off, let me just kind of go over what the day will look like. This training is a 5-hour training. It runs from 12 to 5. And in those 5 hours, we'll build on what we learned in your 200 or 300-hour program, Their Edge. So every program that I do is built off this CoreX Yoga program that I created. CoreX Yoga program. Buy it online. So that program essentially breaks down to the asanas that we have in the Yoga Asana Handbook. But we're adding in specialty moves for anytime we do a specialty training. So in this case, we'll teach you some bar moves to add into what we learned in our training in year 300, or for you guys if you're in the 200. So you're going to want to get your manual, pull that out. Essentially, the CoreX Yoga program, this one, today we're teaching Barre Yoga. The CoreX Yoga is Pilates meets yoga. And so largely what you'll see is in the handbook, in the yoga snippets, the movements, the sequencings that we have there, that's the floor work, is largely what CoreX Yoga translates over to. And so from my point of view, the reason I started yoga and the reason I then subsequently started training is I feel that a strong core leads to a strong body, leads to a happy life, right? But then there's that mindfulness piece of yoga, which is its own loveliness in its own right. So if we can put those things together, then I think it's a nice way to explore Pilates and the core strength and the athleticism with the yoga without giving anything up. We can have our cake and eat it too. So like that combination, those combinations might be you teach a vinyasa flow on Monday night, and then on Thursday night, you teach a CoreX Yoga class, right? So then building from there, Pilates, when we think about bar yoga, bar is Pilates standing up. So we have the same business model. We have the same concept that we group together, and that we pull the postures from the manual that we already have from CoreX Yoga. We add in the specific postures regarding bar, just like we did the Pilates movements for CoreX Yoga. Now we're doing it for bar. But at no point do we have to totally reinvent the wheel in order to create like a hybrid class and maybe some spice, to your offerings as a teacher, or if you're taking this for your own benefit, understanding the benefits of that. So if you open up to the manual, which I'll show you guys, the front there says Bar Core Yoga, and that pretty much encapsulate everything I just said. So we're going to get some bar movements, right? And we're not going to go real far off the ledge on what bar can be. It can be a really hard class. And I've had some people take bar and they've said, oh my God, I cannot do that class. That was so hard, But I think that if we could find the yoga teachings in that bar experience, meaning we are finding what's right for us in our practice, and we're taking the modifications that we typically accustomed to hearing in a yoga class. We're accepting the permission that yoga teachers offer, which might be different than maybe more of a militant style bar class. Not to say all are, but many of them do kind of tend to say that this is what we're doing, and there's not a lot of room around that idea. So that's why I started BarX Yoga, because I feel like the CoreX Yoga worked out so nicely, but some folks just don't want to be on the floor. And I know we were right, being on the floor. And I know we were talking about like the active aging community. They don't want to be on the floor. They want to stay upright. There's so many reasons for that. We'll get into the nitty gritty of that as the day goes on. But I feel like it's really, really helpful to create a fitness regimen for an active aging group that can build bone density, which helps prevent osteoporosis. That I know we were talking before we started here, that the development of the muscles from the knee down and that lower leg complex, right? Just the importance of that building up those muscles. And honestly, the likelihood of, you know, someone of a certain age falling and that being, you know, their end of life is a really, really high, scary number. And I think that you said it best when you said that's preventable. We can prevent that, and we can prevent that by doing the work. So we'll go to page 1. Page 1. Okay, what is Barre? Barre is commonly known as standing Pilates. So not in this manual, but yeah, there you go. Barre is commonly known as standing Pilates. So there are different, just like yoga, there's different lineages of Barre. There's more the Barre fitness class that enhances dancers, you know, something like a dancer might expect to see or want or yearn for. There's Barre classes that, you know, big gyms have put together, and we'll explore some of the tools that they use in absence of a bar on a wall, like we have bars on our wall. And there's Bosu stick I'll show you today. Then there's those at home looking to find a way to get their fitness in. And I think that this is really it. How do we get the fitness in when we're at home and we don't have any equipment or we don't have a lot of room? Sometimes chair yoga can be tricky if the chair isn't that strong, right? The chair can collapse, which could cause a bigger problem if you just stayed on the sofa. But most folks have a kitchen counter, and that's what I recommend for this class. So bringing your practitioner over to the kitchen counter, and if they're not on video, then they don't have to worry about what their kitchen looks like. But if that's what they hunger for and they want that, then this works to be a really nice, like one-on-one virtual class where I'll Zoom, I can see you, you can see me. We're both at our kitchen counters teaching each other. And I think a really great service to offer at this time to a huge population of people that maybe haven't left their house in a good long time. So those are some of the reasons why the Barre training is happening right now. The centerpiece of this discipline is to initiate the movement from the core with an element of dance. So when we think about yoga, and I know having taken my 300, much of this is a refresher, which is good. It still applies. I think that with yoga, it's initiated by the breath. So everything has to do with, inhaling into the movement and exhaling to expand, or vice versa. If you follow Leslie Kaminoff, he says mix it up, which I love. Whereas Pilates is different. It's more about initiating the movement from the core. So even if you Google, let's say, boat pose, which can be found in both modalities, it can be found in Pilates, it can be found in Barre. You Google boat, you'll see the pictures. They'll look very similar side by side, but the approach of getting into boat would be very different in that yoga takes it with the integration of the breath into and through the movement and out of the movement, whereas Pilates more goes through the physical structure beginning with the core of the body. And we'll go over more about that too as the day goes on. So what else? Because Barre is originated from dance, we want to think about what kind of music we want to integrate. So I had a DVD I'm going to pull back out. Shannon Fable. I like Shannon Fable. She's great. And she has all kinds of, she uses like indie music, and it's not so fast, but it has a nice rhythm, but there's not so many vocals in it that competes with the instructor's instruction. And that's really important if you're taking this to be a teacher. So I like her stuff. Check her out. She's got a bunch of resources. I've taken many trainings with her along the way. In fact, I'm even a Bellatone master ambassador with her. And so, yeah, I've taken a number of those trainings, and all of that has enhanced the yoga teacher that I've become, because we have this other modality sort of fabric in this experience of how I go about teaching a yoga class. So spice. Keep it fun, right? So choose your music based on BPM, beats per minute, to set the pace.
So that's up to you. There's no right or wrong. So the difference might be the music that you choose for an active aging community, for example, might be different than the music you choose that maybe sign on for your 6-week weight loss challenge, right? So different musics, different BPMs on that. Obviously, we kind of want to find that movement, just like in yoga, it so sets the tone of what we're going to be doing today. So like I've been to like a rock your sauna class, and they've got rock music and it's going and Pearl Jam's on and I'm working and it's Vinyasa Flow. Much different than say when like Jay on the drums is playing and I'm zenned out on like a bolster on the floor, you know? And so Barre yoga works the same way in that you become kind of a little DJ in this industry, figuring out what music you want to share and how you want to share it in your classes and making sure that you know the licensure rules and such to the music that you're playing. And we'll get into that a little bit too. Okay, so the big thing is allow each practitioner time and space to personalize their experience. So I can't say this enough, and I know you've heard me say this a million times, Eve, right? But I believe everybody walks through that door commonly picking the class first because of the time and day and availability of the class. Then as they get to know the instructor and they build a connection with them and so on, then from that point, we might see a little bit more of they come to your class and move their schedule around because of it. Some people want to, but can't. So I think that because of that, offering an all levels class remains paramount in this class as much as any other class. So if they're coming because you're offering Barre yoga at 6:30 and maybe they have some weight loss goals, or maybe it's active aging looking to build up bone density, which is so incredibly important, you know, whatever that might be, if we can present the class in such a way that we just get everyone moving, and then we add in the modifications that they can take on very, very early on. Like, hey, for those of you that want to keep the arms down, you feel free, right? But then maybe also that encouragement to expand onto it, to move outside of comfort, but not into pain with our qualities of, you know, let's try floating those arms up. How does that feel for you when you do that? If it doesn't work for you, feel free to push it down, but understand this. If you have a weight loss class, and that's what if that's what you're saying you're offering is a 6-week weight loss journey, you will burn more calories than arms overhead than not. That being said, depending on your audience, so commonly like frozen shoulder is very common around menopause or above that. And so lifting the arms overhead may not be accessible to your practitioner. Completely fine. Come, do what you can. Put your hand, maybe lift your knee a little higher than you otherwise would have, and just do what you can. I'm happy that you're here. You've already done what you needed to do by showing up. And so I think that allowing each practitioner time and space to personalize their experience is paramount. So we want to do that. Okay, so key concepts that we'll kind of go over and that we'll touch on. You guys will get a part of this unless you guys are staying on beyond. So key concepts. So we have upper and lower body work. So again, going into the difference between what happens when the arms go up versus where we mostly get the movement in the bottom half of the body. We will see more fitness benefits as far as like burning calories by moving the lower body and by building up the muscles of the lower body, simply because those muscles are bigger. And you'll get the recording of this too at the end. Just because those muscles are bigger, and bigger muscles burn calories. It drives the metabolism. That's just how it goes. So no matter how toned your arms might be, it's never going to replace what large muscle fibers within the lower half of the body can do. So we'll talk about that a little bit. Mostly what today will be about is practicum. You know, so we'll talk about the first hour, like how to go about doing it. We'll go on a different Zoom for Cassandra's class. She'll lead a class, and then we'll take a little break, and then we'll sit pen to paper and start making classes. And that's the plan for the day. So navigating bar position, like where you are in relationship to the bar, where you set your practitioners up on the bar. Bar is great for elbow room. Classes that need elbow room, and that, you know, one bar going along a long studio like this, I think I'm set to maybe teach about 20 people. Here, everyone has their own space, and it's nice. The way I set it up is I put the mat against the wall and bring it out, and then people have their mat space and so on. key thing, make sure nobody has their stuff around the mat. You know, that's a big deal. So that if we do like open leg plies or open leg forward folds, or we turn to the side, that there's not like stuff there that people have to worry about. Particularly glasses, eyeglasses or something that people tend to put on the ground and then stepped on during class, which is never the story you want told. So there's that. The other thing is teaching a linear class. And the reason I'm teaching this now is different than the reason I've taught it for a decade, is that before it used to be how many people can you fit in the space, right? So when I would teach at Lululemon, for example, we've been featured there a number of times, there was like an inch in between each mat. There was no room. And so that's lovely. That's a great energy. That's a great vibe, but you cannot be throwing in wild things in that dynamic. So understanding, stay on the mat. We don't go beyond the perimeters of the mat. This is the space defined, can translate over to present day now, where people want their space. They want their elbow room in between practitioners. And so same thing goes, that we want to keep them on their real estate. That is their mat. So I know that doesn't sound very yogic, but we also need to, thread in real life on how these things go and so on. Okay, so number 4, offering modifications. I've said it a million times, said it again, do it early. And then 5, cues versus quality. So if we open up our manual, if you guys had your Yoga Asana handbook here, and you flip to say, let's pick one. Let's pick one that we'll do on the bar. Pick a fun one. We'll pick Warrior 3. That's a fun one for bar. Page 80 on the big manual here, Eve, in this one. Yeah, page 80. And that gives me a chance to catch my breath and drink some water. Hydrate, right, Lori? All right, so Warrior 3. So this is a posture that we might see some practitioners not really try in class for fear of falling, or maybe they don't feel they're there, it just looks hard. With that, I've also seen the expressions on the faces of my practitioners when they can't do it, it's kind of a drag, it's like, they're all doing it, I was the only one who couldn't do it. And if the idea behind yoga is to help lift folks up, and I know certainly that's what I'm trying for, by adding the element of a bar, all of these postures that maybe were not accessible to them before, they're not quite there, whatever, now are very accessible because we have a bar to work with. So in this way, we have our mat coming out of the wall, just like we talked about. We're facing the wall, our hands are on the bar, and we can easily move ourselves into a Warrior 3 without problems. So when we talk about the cues and the qualities of the Warrior 3, the difference being, just like in a yoga class, in the bar class, we get everybody basically moving. So, okay, class, let's all face the wall, right? Basics. And then come into this asana for Warrior 1. So if we're starting to put sequencing together, which we'll be doing on the back half of the day, when we start off in a Warrior 1, right, then we're already framing up the anatomy behind it. The shoulders are over the hips, we're facing forward, we're basically getting to where we want to go. I think it's helpful because the primary movers, the quads, the front of the thighs, are fired and engaged and hot and ready. And that goes such a long way in helping a practitioner with the balanced posture. So fire up the muscle, warm up the muscle, prepare the muscle, then add the balance posture. And this would go in any class, whether it be bar or not. So I like to come into this from Warrior 1 for that reason. So my cues here are bend the front knee, place the fingertips on the floor, and spring up or lift off. I can tell you at this stage in my journey, I don't spring up very much at all. So, right, I mindfully move into things. So, but others do. There are people like to spring. For me, I'll come to Warrior 1 because it's bar and it's not yoga on the floor. Instead, I'll come from Warrior 1 and I'll float those fingertips down onto the bar as I send the back leg up, right? And it's just that simple. And then we've walked them into Warrior 3 from Warrior 1. So balancing on one leg, working opposite leg in a continuous line of the torso. So kind of going back to the beginning where we were talking about that Pilates piece where we're initiating a movement for the core, and we're firing up the glutes, and we're sending the weight back through the legs, and flexing the foot, sending the energy out the heel. It's very, very intentional, inviting the hips to face down, still square with the shoulder. And so one idea here would be, can you find the mountain in this posture? Right? And so if in any yoga posture, if you're in Warrior One, can you find the mountain in this posture? Can you find that anatomical alignment that we see in the bones and, you know, the basic structure and so on, and then just move the limbs from that place. So there's the idea behind that. And then in this manual, I say, place hands either in front, to the side, or behind you. So still giving them a choice, although the difference between this and on a bar is I probably wouldn't go into that unless maybe somebody needed it for some sort of reason. I would probably sooner invite their fingertips to the top of the bar and then maybe say, you know what, at any point, if you need to make an adjustment or you want to put your foot down or anything like that, take a break and join back in, you feel free. What I do like about a bar is that if we go as far as setting someone up into a Warrior Three, which was kind of a to-do, it took some doing to get that far, I would leave them there for a little bit. And then I'd present somewhat of a flow in it, in that putting them in Warrior Three and then letting them break, because that's a lot of ask. Letting them break back to that Warrior One, bringing them back to the mat, into the mountain at the back of the mat, letting them just shake it out and just like recover, right? And then same thing, other side. And then hold for a time. And then bring them back to that mountain. Again, shake it out, let them recover, and so on. But then I would repeat that same process, maybe 3 to 6 times. So we would go mountain to Warrior One to Warrior Three, back to mountain, both sides, 3 to 6 times. That's going to take some time to do that. And so bar yoga is typically a 45-minute class or so. It can be an hour, but if it's an hour, I would say you might want to start it off with bar, and then maybe that last 15 minutes be that floor work, which I know my students really responded to. If they wanted a 60-minute platform, they wanted to come to the floor, and that's where we would do the traditional Pilates. And we've not really left the modality in that we're still doing Pilates, but now we're lying down instead of standing up. But that's up to the teacher, and that's up to who you're teaching, and that's not recommended for the active aging community, in which case I say 45 minutes. I really honestly do. And then even, I know when we were in training together, we did like a moving meditation, standing. And I think that that could be a nice way to cinch up this class at the end. I think that that could be really nice. So, okay, so back to our Warrior One and how to do it in regards to bar yoga, and then we'll go back to our bar manual. So qualities would be the refinement. We've already offered up the modifications, which are listed below, which we wouldn't put a block with the hands because we have a bar. The bar is like the ultimate prop. It takes place of like so many other props that you would need to see on the bar. But you could keep that back foot on the ground. So I think we touched on that. So now we'll jump up to the qualities. I would start to sprinkle in the qualities. So going back to like refinement of teaching, starting off in mounting, getting everybody comfortable with the movement, stepping into the Warrior One, they're facing the wall. Right now, this is pretty familiar if they've ever been to a yoga class, right? Now we're gonna guide them through the progression into Warrior Three, inviting their fingertips to the bar. And I do say fingertips because sometimes folks will have a tendency to dump their entire body weight on the bar. And we don't want the wall coming down, right? So we don't want the wall to hold the people up. We want the core strength to hold the posture. So that's something we have to teach people because you got a whole bunch of people, you know, it's a thing. It's a genuine thing. Less so if we have them on the kitchen counter, which, by the way, and this prompts me to think of you, for people that want to do in-home private one-on-one sessions, this is an excellent well-rounded modality to do it, because they're like, I don't really have a space to do this. Where could we do this? Then say, well, typically I do this at the kitchen counter. Do you have that? Yes. And then if so, if not, like a kitchen table, not a chair, So bringing them in-home private sessions is not only highly sought after, and I believe will be for a very long time, is really nice for your active aging community that maybe going out is a little trickier. They'd rather to have someone come in. It's a nice way to support the finances of the instructor because the going rate of that hovers in or around $100 an hour, up or down with packages. But, I don't know that I do private sessions for less than $59 an hour. I tend to instead work in large groups, and then just drop the price point because they're all kind of pitching in a little bit to compensate for my time and giving yourself permission to compensate for your time, right? Because we all have to eat as instructors and probably have rent to pay and so on. And so I think that it's important to have a good relationship with money on that front. And if that's something that you struggle with or that you struggle with, I like Denise DT Money Blocks Boot Camp. So she will help you guys through money blocks. So that's her gig, not mine, but I'll give it the plug. All right, so let's get into the qualities of our Warrior 3. We're facing the bar. We've gone from Mountain. We've gone from Warrior 1. We're now moving into the Warrior 3. So let's see the difference between our Asana handbook and the bar. So keep extended legs, toes pointing downwards. So that wouldn't change. That's still the same. Keep hips pointing downward. Still the same. Doesn't change. Hold. Still the same. With control, float back down to Warrior 1. So I like that lingo, float, right? So we're not going to jar through these movements, particularly if it's active aging community, but even if it's weight loss community, because if they're injured, they can't come to class, and that doesn't work out. So some fun things to keep an eye on is keeping a micro bend in the standing leg, and not to lock the knees. So we would do that in bar, just as we would do that in yoga. Really important. And I would say in bar, you'd want to reinforce it even more because the tendency to lock the knee and pay attention to what your arms and your bar and your upper body is doing is much higher. It's also because the bar's there, they can do so much more on that standing leg, which on the other side of that idea might mean they're more likely to lock that knee joint. So important not to do that. You want to keep that in mind. So find a drishti. Drishti means gaze. Will focus the mind. And so I had a long-term student, hopefully still doing on the other side of this, and I put these stickers on the wall for her because she had vertigo. And whenever she would come to bar, and she loved bar, it would help her to just find one of the leaves on these stickers, and she would just look at that. And that would take care of the vertigo, which is, doesn't work for everybody, but could be a small tip for some, that if all they really need is a point to zero in on, have those kind of things on your walls. Even if it's a tapestry hanging or something like that, it can go a long way. She did this for years and I had no idea. Yeah, it was actually, I was like, really? You've been doing it? Because I was going to take them down. She's like, oh, don't take them down. I use those. And I'm like, well, okay, they'll stay. And so now they're still here. All right. What else? When exiting the bend, bend the front knee and allow the back leg to meet the floor. So again, we're finding different ways to present the language to keep the class interesting and flavorful. So thesaurus.com, you can write that down, thesaurus.com, rather than always hungering for new sequencing, find a language, keep your sequencing, let your people get used to your sequencing. And I think that repetition leads towards mastery. So not only you as a teacher will get more refined in teaching your class, but I think your student will start to see how far they're progressing when they know a sequence and it's somewhat familiar to them and how much further they've come because they've shown up consistently. So I'm a big advocate of that. Not everybody agrees with me and you don't have to, but it's just how I feel about it. So Virabhadrasana 3, Warrior 3, strengthens the core and legs, improves the balance and the posture. So a big piece of the posture that I like bar so much, and there's a set height that the bar is meant to be, but sometimes the kitchen counter is at that height, and that's okay. It's fine. But the idea behind it is just making sure your surface is high enough so that we're not rounding, right? Because that's the opposite of what we want. We're trying to open it up. All right, strengthening the shoulders and the back. So when we think about opening the pickle jar, you know, like just the daily life activities that we have, if the muscles are starting to experience atrophy and isn't having that movement, then those daily things we're trying to do can be even harder to do. So strengthening the shoulders and back, I think, is paramount in helping folks with independent living, which again really feeds to that active aging community. And so that'll be the main theme of today's class. I'll mention the weight loss and the other things too, but I think today, you know, that'll be the focus on the plugs that I share. And so we still have the mind-body connection that we see in yoga, which is why it's Barre yoga or Barre X yoga if it's my signature brand. Balance improvement, which is huge. I think we were talking about the number of people that fall, the number of people that end their life in the bathroom, right? So like having that balance is just so big, that strength, but also that element of stretch. And so when we think about like stretch, we think about the muscle fibers and they're encapsulated in the connective tissue. And I know your studies with yin yoga, this is something I know that you're really loving yin yoga. It's the same sort of thing. And that if we can get the connective tissue to be as healthy as possible, then our muscles in tandem with that will have a better chance of being as healthy as possible, and vice versa. So we can get our muscles as strong as we want, but if we're not working on that connective tissues as well, then there will be a stop point on the muscular gain, enhancement, health, whatever it is your particular goal is. Okay, so cues versus quality, and then segment design, which we'll get into very heavily in the back half of the class. By the time you leave today, you'll have a whole class that you can then go home and practice on your kitchen counter day after day after day until you know it in your bones. Literally. I didn't even mean to do that. Okay, so we have our class starting here, and I want to get through this beginning part of the manual first, give a little break, do a class, and then we'll pick it back up. So next up is what about Pilates? So that's this. Pilates was created by Joseph Pilates to help rehabilitate injury. The concept was that a strong core results in a healthy body, and that drives this practice. There are traditionally 10 Pilates exercises, and they're known as the Pilates 10. So this is part 2. And it pairs up with the videos that we have online as well. And we'll go over those together. You and I will. But the Pilates 10 are the key concepts that we'll go over today is what the Pilates 10 are. And you guys can Google it if you're not here for the training. Protecting the cervical spine. I don't know about you, but I've had a practitioner say, you know, I love the Pilates, but boy, my neck kind of aches the whole time. Why that is and how we can prevent it. What props we can use to aid it. In this case, Barre. Modifications that we can give, sequencing tips. I know I've touched on just a few in a broad strokes kind of idea. We'll unpack that and put those into practice today so that you know them inside and out and creating a class. So the next is a cheat sheet. And so a Barre X yoga class essentially comes into 3 different sequences. We have Barre, we have Pilates, and we have yoga. And so I feel like a well-rounded class will have about equal parts of this. So maybe 15 minutes of each, or 14 minutes if you have, you know, your warm up something different. But, you know, I like to warm up with the Barre. I really like warming up with the Barre. I think it's a great place to start. In yoga, I often recommended the trainings that they warm up with like a sun salutations, usually A, not even B. Warm up with sun salutations. Get everybody moving, get that connective tissue nice and pliable, fire up those muscles, and then move into the class. Here, you can do that. You could make the yoga sequence. Literally, you could write in Sun Sal A, and that be your yoga sequence for a good long time, you know, especially until you master the other parts of it. And then the Barre sequence, and then the Pilates sequence. So what we'll work on is how can we get the Pilates sequence in without bringing the practitioners to the floor, since active aging is the target reason for you taking this training. So that's what you and I will do. But those are things you want to keep in mind. So there's a bunch of these. There's cheat sheets. The next one is the Barre worksheet. And these are the snippets. So, and you and I are going to fill these out together today. So Barre snippet 1, Barre snippet 2, Barre snippet 3. So essentially we want to just take like 2, 3, 4 postures, put them together, commit them to memory, know them inside and out, so that when we bring our practitioner to the bar or the kitchen counter or wherever it is you're teaching them, you know this so well. And if they're coming to your class regularly, they know this so well. And I think that that's a big deal. And so having those, then you can interchange those and so on. And I think I've said in other trainings, and I wonder if I've ever told you though, Eve, is that I started this idea back when I first started teaching about 13 years ago now. It's been over a decade. I lost count in a decade. And depending on who showed up, if they wanted more athleticism or if they were kind of dying, I would need to be able to like change gears for my all levels class, which I'm so thankful for that group because they taught me to be the teacher for the training that I offer today. But I had index cards. And so I would have index cards just with 3 postures that went well together. The transitions were nice and smooth. And I could just switch out the index cards and keep them at the top of my mat and not have to depend on my memory because nobody really wants that, you know. And it also really took off the pressure of teaching because I could just pick a different index card and share that with the class. And so the people that came regularly would get excited because they knew, oh, I know what sequence she's going to do. And that's rewarding, you know, so that feels good. So we're going to build some of those today. Some of that will come from the actual pictures of the postures of the bar that I'll share with you. And that's also on the website. If you guys are taking the online training, that's there. Okay, next up is Pilates worksheet. Same thing, Pilates instead of bar. So no real reason to go over that. And then next up is the yoga worksheet. Same thing, pulling it from the manual. So here's a secret, not specific to the active aging, but specific maybe to the weight loss crowd that does want that floor work component. In your yoga asana handbook, the standing postures are largely yoga, and the postures on the floor are largely Pilates. And the way I wrote the manual, however, would be more approaching it with the breath rather than the core. And that's why it's part of the Yoga Asana handbook. But the movement itself are Pilates. And so, or also can be found in Pilates, I should say. Okay, then the next one up is our warm-up worksheet. So this is something that we could change up once a month, these different worksheets, you know. So again, those snippets, putting in 3 postures, 3 postures, 3 postures. Maybe as you're just getting going, your warm-up worksheet is simply sun salutations A, and that works too. So warm-up worksheet. All right, I'm getting this system down, these hybrid classes. I forget you guys are there sometimes. Sorry about that. I'll do my best not to. All right, and then the next one is the cool down worksheet. Same idea, right? So we're just creating a system and replicating it. That's all we're doing. And then, okay, so then we're going to be getting into, and we're at 12:44 now, we'll be getting into the different postures that we'll be doing. Eve, you and I, this is what we'll be working on all day together. For you guys, like the first one is chair pulses. And just to give you an example of what that looks like is you'll draw a little picture and stick picture there. And then you have mountain, you have chair, and you have chair releves. So, and then we have a bunch of those. And these will be the bar postures that I'll teach you today and that you'll thread into the standing postures that you learned with me in my 300. And then that together without the floor work, because it's active aging, you said you don't want that. That together will create that bar class in that 45-minute structure. Sound good? All right, well, let me wrap up with these folks here, and then I will answer your specific questions, and then we'll go ahead and take Cassandra's class. Okay, everybody, so if you go to the announcements page in Slack, so you'll have to go, we're going to end this meeting, you'll have to go to Slack, go to the announcements page, and that's where the Zoom that starts at 1 o'clock that Cassandra will be teaching. Yay, Cassandra, I'm so excited about that. And she'll be sharing a bar yoga class with us. So we'll have a little bit of fun. Definitely get your workout on today. I think you will love her presentation and her style and her flair. And Cassandra's definitely one to do her homework to keep that
those classes really fresh and new and always looking for a new way to like add things in and so on. Whereas me, I'm a little bit more system oriented. And so we pair nicely in that way to deliver both. So, all right, you guys, namaste. Thanks for joining. 1 o'clock. We'll see you on the Zoom, but not this Zoom. I'm going to close this Zoom out. So go to Slack, go to virtual Zoom room, just like we always do. And then you'll see the announcements. I'll drop the hashtag there, and Cass's class start promptly at 1. So be there. It's